What I've realized working with small business owners is there's a lack of clarity on, who they really are, what their business really achieves, who their customers are. The first step of coaching or anything is know thyself. You need to know yourself. So that clarity on what your own strengths and weaknesses are is very important. A lot of people overestimate themselves. A lot of people underestimate their potential. And some are good at analysis, some are good at decisions. A diet probably works for one individual. The same diet might not work for somebody else. So knowing yourself, what works for you, it is very important. What keeps you happy? You might have a flourishing business, but if it's not aligned to your purpose of life or your mission, it's not going to keep you happy. The aspirations change with time. That clarity and focus, it's a continuous process. You need to keep reflecting within to get that clarity, and you should always have that clarity. That's going to keep you. You need to know what your value system is. At times, taking decisions is much easier when you know what your value system is and what your mission or aspiration is. And does that decision align with your value system and your mission, vision, values? If yes, great. If no, it's easy to say no. Then it does not align with my value system.
Hi there. Welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this episode, I had a discussion with Saurabh Seth. Saurabh is a founder of Ethical Growth Partner. He's a business and executive coach. After 20 plus years of experience at Ernst Young and JPMorgan Chase, he now helps entrepreneurs and leaders build clarity, structure for sustainable growth. This was a very interesting discussion. Saurabh shared insights on how clarity, accountability, and a mindset drive business success. He also shared practical strategies for setting long-term goals, building a strong team culture, balancing life and work, and overcoming execution challenges through disciplined leadership. Hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as I did. And if you do find a value in this discussion, don't forget to send us your feedback, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel. We are working very hard by every episode to send you very meaningful discussions with the business owners, business leaders, coaches, consultants, and trainers to help you grow and scale your business. Your feedback and support is very important to us, so don't forget to send us your feedback. So thank you again for your time. Until next time, please welcome Saurabh Seth. Hey guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today our guest is Saurabh Seth. Saurabh, in your area of expertise, helping businesses from a coaching standpoint. There's a lot of help needed these days. So I'm looking forward to a discussion. Looking forward to learning from you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Same way, Gurmeet. I have enjoyed your podcast. I've enjoyed our introductory discussion. So it's been a pleasure to be on your show.
So let's talk about where you're spending a lot of time these days, Saurabh. How you've been helping business leaders.
I think I've been working with a lot of business leaders. My main focus is getting them clarity. What I've realized working with small business owners is there's a lack of clarity on, who they really are, what their business really achieves, who their customers are. So, my major focus initially on a lot of business owners is getting that clarity first so that we can have the systems in place for whatever they want to achieve.
So is that so? Let's dissect a little bit of that. So is that clarity on who they are as a person, or is that clarity on a business side, what they're trying to achieve as a business?
I say the first step of coaching or anything is know thyself. You need to know yourself. So that clarity on what your own strengths and weaknesses are is very important. A lot of people overestimate themselves. A lot of people underestimate their potential. And some are good at analysis, some are good at decisions. Not everybody has everything, but you need to understand your strengths, your weaknesses, and then leverage those. If there are weaknesses, you probably need to delegate. You need some help. It starts with knowing yourself, but then you need to know your business. What's your goal? Where are you heading? What business are you really in? Then clarity about who your customers are. Yeah. So there's a clarity of every single aspect that you really need to go through. Is very essential. That gives you a very clear view of who you are, where you're going, and then you can build on that to have an efficient business in place.
So this is the area I see not only business owners struggle, but a lot of young people struggle as well. Saurabh, there's so many text messages, so many apps, so many, so much information. It's not that we are struggling because of lack of information, but you see people get distracted, they lose focus on that. It's not easy to stay focused and gain that clarity that especially what we've gone through with the COVID. People have a lot of time on their hand, whether they read two different authors of the book. They'll read one book, will tell them to do 20 different ways this way. They read another book, the guy has a different approach. It's not easy to maintain that clarity. So what do you recommend? How do business owners go about it when they want to gain a little bit more clarity with all the clutter of messages and all the apps?
Yeah. As I say, if awareness was the key, we would all be millionaires and we'll all have six abs, right? Six pack abs. That's not true. So a diet probably works for one individual. The same diet might not work for somebody else. So knowing yourself, what works for you, it is very important. What keeps you happy? You might have a flourishing business, but if it's not aligned to your purpose of life or your mission, it's not going to keep you happy. You might earn $500,000 in your job, but if does not align with your purpose, what you really want to do, you'll see people being unhappy. So I think the very first step in anything is reflect within, see what suits you, what works for you. And there are tools available. We have assessments wherein people go through those assessments. There is a lot of research done on human psychology. We just need to leverage that. And in today's time where there's a lot of notifications, beep, uh, it's more important to slow down, sit alone, relax, reflect. What do I really want in life? What do I really want in business? And once you have that clarity, I think then you have all the tools available in this world to achieve it. But somehow seems like that very first step, you need somebody asking you right questions, probing you systematically to get you that clarity.
My experience has been that clarity works both ways. One is, first of all, just figuring out what you really want. Definitely you need a clarity. Other part of that is when you start winning on some things, you have a couple of wins, you lose that clarity very, very quickly as well.
Yes.
So there's also a risk of that. Definitely you're clear on what you started with, but the moment you got a little bit of momentum, you have a couple of wins on your in your backpack, you start losing clarity again. So it's not only gaining clarity at one point. You gotta stay clear and stay focused. I think that's where the challenge comes in.
Oh yes, it's a continuous process. And humans, we all love growth. Where I am today was an aspiration. Now that aspiration has changed, we all want to grow. Life situations change, right? You get married, you got kids. Do you really want to now keep traveling like a nomad? No. The aspirations change with time. That clarity and focus, it's a continuous process. You need to keep reflecting within to get that clarity, and you should always have that clarity. That's going to keep you. You need to know what your value system is. At times, taking decisions is much easier when you know what your value system is and what your mission or aspiration is. And does that decision align with your value system and your mission, vision, values? If yes, great. If no, it's easy to say no. Then does not align with my value system. And a lot of people, a lot of times we've not reflected on that value system or the aspiration as well. And you rightly said, Gurmeet, it has to be a continuous process. You reflect, every night. You keep reflecting. Every day evolves.
So let's talk about some of those items helps people to focus on a clarity side. Are goals one of those items that or what else you saw that definitely goals, you need some sort of goals, what are you trying to achieve? Do they add to clarity, and or what else in your experience that adds to that clarity?
I think goals add to goal is a tool. You sit back, you relax, you think what you really want to be 5 years, 7 years from now. And it's never, the goal should not be a short term or a short sighted ones. The people who work on long term goals are always more successful because they've thought through it, right? So once you define those long term goals, and it could be anything, it could be your business. A lot of businesses would say a 5-year goal, 7-year goal, 10-year goal, or we want to be a $50 billion organization in 5 years. But you need to set those goals. But again, before the setting of goals, it's important to understand your purpose. My goal cannot be just I want to be a $10 million organization and I don't know what my values are. The foundation is your values, vision, mission, purpose, and then you build on it and say, keeping those foundations in mind, what my goals are, articulate them very clearly. I want to be a successful coach is not enough. You have to be very specific on what. I want to be a coach to this kind of an industry, this kind of a person. I see myself earning X amount of money and keeping my values in line, whatever it is. The goals need to be very specific on. You just can't say I want to be a doctor. What kind of a doctor you want to be? Right. So goals are important tool. And once you've reflected on those, you can dissect it into smaller chunks and say, okay, 5 years from now, this is where I want to be. This is wherein I need to start today.
So you need a short-term goal and the long-term goal, both. With what I'm hearing, that you need short-term goal. What I need to do in a short term to hit my goal long-term. Is that what you're including?
Yeah. So you need a long-term vision and a long-term goal. And that long-term goal will give you a short-term goal. You don't start with a short-term goal. You start with what my long-term goal is, where I need to be 5 years, 10 years from now. And then, bring it to what my this year's goal is. And just defining the goal is not enough. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Right? And if you can't describe it, you will never hit it. So you need to describe your goal. This is where I am. And then define that path towards that goal. And things change. Life happens. You keep monitoring that path. Are you on the right track? Or do you need like Google map would give you a detour if you've taken a wrong turn. It'll take you to that right goal. It's very clear where you're going. So, yeah.
Got it. So what else business owners do who are looking for that kind of clarity, that kind of, the people who are high performers? Definitely goals are important. Clarity is important. What else you find that they practice, or they some of the items that they get them through, or some of the obstacles, what they struggle with?
I think the biggest struggle right now is taking actions.
Execution.
As you said, execution. But again, the awareness as well. There's one book that says something else. So we did touch upon the clarity. But once you have the clarity, all that awareness will feed into what works for you, which book works for you. But I see a lot of people reading books. I met somebody who had a goal of reading 30 books this year. I have people driving to work, listening to podcasts. So, which is a very good change. People want to be more aware on different things. But I've started telling those business owners, you've picked up a book, you loved it, right? It aligned with what you wanted to do. Write down 2 action items from that book and follow it through. Just picking up another book is not going to help. So there's an awareness part of it. And with AI coming in, the knowledge is democratized. There's no, you can find the knowledge, what you're looking for. It's not a challenge. You don't need to go to a Harvard or Stanford anymore. You'll find all that knowledge in today's world. But taking an action on it is wherein a lot of people struggle. There's so much of an information. One, what works for me. And then I like 2 things. Good. Take an action. Write down those 2 things. And I think the biggest challenge, again, is even if you've written it down, a lot of business owners, entrepreneurship is a lonely journey.
Yeah.
So a lot of entrepreneurs would say, hey, I want a better website. And I've been wanting a better website for the last 3 years. The accountability is a challenge in itself, because you get so busy in your life, in your work, there is nobody holding those business owners accountable to those actions that are really good for their business. So we've covered the awareness and clarity part of it. The actions and accountability is equally important.
So, yeah, I think you that's a great point you mentioned, Saurabh, that if you look at 15 years ago or 20 years back, there was lack of information, lack of knowledge. We all wanted the right information. People struggle to get the right information. But the AI, where we are right now, that gaining information, gaining knowledge is not an issue. We have more than enough knowledge. It's a flood of information. So it definitely execution and accountability where the human behavior comes in. Can you stay focused? Can you stay disciplined? Can you stay structured? So is that an area you see a lot of struggle, and how do you help out business leaders when they're struggling with these two areas, with accountability and execution?
So yes, as I said, for me, the foremost is clarity. And you touch that awareness, pick what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've picked up what works for you. So for me, I work with a lot of business owners to bring that clarity. Then we look at their processes and see if they're effective enough to reach the goal that they've defined. They want to be X million dollars with X branches across the country in 10 years. Okay, but what systems would we need 10 years from now
Mm-hmm.
to reach there? And once we've defined it is when we start creating action items. We break it down. If you really want to be a doctor, you can be a doctor in 10 years, but you write down what you really want to be. And once you've defined it, what you need people, process, technology, contracting. These are the 4 aspects of business. And write down what each of it needs to be. And once you've clearly defined is wherein I work with business owners to say, okay, this is your 2-year goal, 1-year goal. What are the actions we need to reach that goal?
Mm-hmm.
Once you've defined those specific actions and the timelines, like any other project manager would do, we'll break it down. And you know about it, Gurmeet. You're into project management yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You've defined those action items. You've defined those deadlines. Assign those responsibilities. Is what your action piece is, and accountability is. You have a coach coming in next week. You got a homework to do. Have you thought about what you need to do? Have you taken those actions or not? Or you work with that coach to ensure those actions are completed. So awareness is not enough alone. Defining actions is not enough alone. Completing them. It could be very small actions, but completing them regularly is going to give you a profound compounding impact on the business.
And to your point, Saurabh, those challenges changes as you make a progress. Every time you make a little bit of progress, the challenge completely come in a different shape or form, right? So, challenge you have at $1 million, where business is different challenges. You get to 2-3 million different challenges. As you keep adding a little bit of progress, they're gonna come in a different shape and form, and you gotta change your approach to tackle new challenges along the way.
Oh yes, and you need to have a very positive mindset. There are sanctions now. The tariffs went up.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of people getting into a zone wherein we'll blame the
Mm-hmm.
government, we'll blame Trump for something, for putting in tariffs, we'll blame a war. Those are facts. That's life. That's happening right now. That's beyond our area of control. And, if we keep blaming something, it's not going to improve my business, right? There could be reasons why it is not doing fine, but I can't keep blaming them. So it's important to have a very positive mindset at the same time and say, okay, there are tariffs on my industry now.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the impact is going to be. We need to change our path. The goal is the same. We've defined the goal. I need to reach there. Can we change the path? How can we do it? And I say, it's a very strong affirmation I ask my clients to use and say, whenever you see yourself blaming or making excuse or being negative, you say, I am responsible. And the moment you say I'm responsible is now you take that leader role and say, okay, well, there's a problem, there's a tariff, what can I do about it? I am responsible. Right? That small tweak really helps. So you will face challenges. I wish business was easy, right?
Yeah.
You will face challenges, and it's just how you react at that moment. The successful entrepreneurs will say, "I'm responsible. I'll do something about it. I'll make a change."
Yeah.
Whereas you'll see somebody just blaming, making an excuse, wasting those vital 6-8 months, wherein they could have taken an action.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the teams. Business owners definitely they have these challenges, what we just talked about. But other challenges is not only they need to gain a clarity or focus, but they also got to help the teams as well. If you have about 20, 15 people in your team, that's a larger team, over 100 employees, you got to transfer the same kind of mindset to these people as well. where you see some of the struggles are, definitely everybody's going to bring their own challenges. You got to figure out, first you gain clarity, then you're going to pass it on to everybody so they can follow you as well, on the same. Otherwise, if you're trying to get somewhere and you don't have people following you, then you have a different struggles, right? So where you see that challenges, how do people deal with some of those challenges to bring that same clarity, same commitment to the teams as well?
Yeah. Once you, again, I would say, and I know I'm repeating that, Gurmeet, but your own clarity on what you want your organization to be, what your vision, mission, purpose is very important. And once you've defined it, the law of attraction comes in. Once it's very clearly defined, and you'll attract similar people.
Mm-hmm.
When you go for hiring, you'll hire people. You'll ask for similar commitments. When you are yourself vague about what my purpose is and where really I want to do, or what my KPIs or targets for my employees should be, those interviews would not go really well. So once you've defined what your expectation is clearly, not those job descriptions for job portals, which don't match with what people really do in their work.
Yeah.
But really, what the expectation is. Once you've defined it clearly, you bring in people. The culture is very important. Once they know, my values are very clear. We look at respect, we look at integrity, we look at commitment. These three are non-negotiable. If I can't have a team which is respectful for each other, there is no integrity, or there is no commitment to grow or competence themselves, not my place, right? Once you've defined that expectation very clearly, you'll see people. These are not the bad values, right?
Yeah.
People would align themselves to these values and work with you. But that constant reiteration of your values, the constant reiteration of your purpose is very important. And you'll see large organizations will have their values written on the wall. They'll have emails going out reiterating what their code of conduct and values and ethics are. Is for a purpose. You're reiterating it to your employees. This is what the expectations are. And if somebody does not align with those, and a lot of time we don't give them those expectations. So a communication is a challenge.
Yeah, when you're building a team, when you're trying to grow a business, that's where the challenge comes in. You're trying to hire a lot of people. You're trying to grow a team. Definitely, you want to make sure that people aligning with your values and you're hiring, but not everybody's gonna align. Or they will say they align. It's gonna change over the time, right? So I think that's where that practice comes in. You got to make sure that they were aligned yesterday. Are they aligned today? You got to constantly keep going through that. Practice and figuring out who's aligned, who's not. Not everybody's gonna align. When you hire, especially when you're growing fast companies, right? That those are the struggles gonna be.
The key to growing fast and big is to grow slow. So you work on these foundations. You work with your people, and when you're hiring, define those values. And as you rightly said, keep reiterating. Keep talking about those. Keep training your team about it. Keep telling them, why it is important and how does it align to the larger purpose of the firm. A lot of organizations, companies, employees don't even know what the business owner is working towards. So if they don't know what your purpose or where you're going towards, how can they help you?
Yeah.
Right. And that's where the communication challenge comes.
Yeah. A lot of business owners, we start businesses as owners. This area of we're building teams, culture. This is not our expertise. We came from technical background, whether somebody came from engineering background, some medical background. We came from this technical background, and we try to build the companies. And it's building company itself. There's so many different responsibilities. You got to grow revenue. You got to take care of payroll. You got to do. There's so many different areas you got to tackle, and you lose focus on these areas. That's where the struggle is. I think there's 20 different items we are split into on a daily basis, and we lose focus on these things. I think that's where the challenge comes in.
Yeah. But once you know thyself, you've defined your strengths and weaknesses very clearly. If I know I'm not a people person, I just can't manage people. You create a plan around it and say, okay, I clearly know this is not my forte, right? I'm a very technical person. I'm going to build the product. I'm going to work with the product team to build something. But hiring, retaining, or building culture is not my forte. It's so important to acknowledge that for business owners and say, okay, this is not my forte. Or I can manage team. I can have large teams. The technical IT aspect of it is not my forte.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have a plan in place. You outsource it to somebody. You trust it to somebody else. You hire somebody who complements your skill set. And
Yeah.
a lot of time business owners would like to hire people who are like them,
Yeah, that
right? You really
you
need
learned
to,
that hard way. That is not the way to go.
yeah.
Um,
And there's a reason why we talk about diversity a lot. There's a diversity of thoughts that's very important as well. And that's why you see a lot of big organizations doing restructuring every 5-7 years of a particular unit or a department, because now the leader has hired the team like they're all technical. Nobody's able to take a business decision, or nobody's people oriented. And now you have a lot of distrust. So one, if you know what your weakness is, let somebody else. You need to know your strengths. Just focus on those strengths. Work on those, take it forward. But understanding those weaknesses and then having a plan in place, give it to somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
Trust somebody else to take care of your people is the key.
Yeah, there's a lot of blind spot when you're trying to build a business. I think that's where we need people like you to help out to pin down those blind spots, and business owner can make people are listening, they know that we can solve each problems to get there, but how long is going to take, how many mistakes you're going to make while you're solving the problem. But if you have people like you helping them see the blind spot, you can get there much faster compared to trying to error kind of stuff, the own approach. So
Yeah.
let's talk about your journey, Saurabh. How did you get involved to helping business leaders on a coaching site? Talk about your journeys. You can walk our audience through.
So Gurmeet, I started my career way back with a company which is EXL Service. I'm very proud of being associated with them, but they are into business process outsourcing,
Okay.
and the whole job was offshoring businesses to India, Philippines, and other countries. Right?
Okay.
It was a very interesting job wherein I get to define processes, and I learned you need to. There used to be time wherein one person would work on an insurance file end to end,
You
everything. They'll
control the
take
whole
care of.
process. You control the whole process.
Yeah, they'll know how to do the renewal. They'll know how to do endorsing a policy. They'll
Yeah.
respond to people. And the key to outsourcing and offshoring and improving the work was to break it down into smaller chunks. Once you
Mm.
break it down to smaller chunks, now you can have expertise in one area. Now,
Mm.
so if I do end to end, this I can only be expert in one.
And you can measure that. If you do end to end, it's hard to measure the whole result. But if you divide it into small pieces, you can probably measure every unit.
Exactly. So
Got it.
you've defined one process to a 10-step process, and you have 10 experts doing, it will be much faster. It'll be much more efficient. You can define how it needs to be done. Now you can get prescriptive on do this, this, this. You can measure, and you can see where the roadblocks is about 10. The fifth one is wherein it takes the maximum amount of time. Let
Mhm.
me make it more efficient. So when you when you divide it is where the magic happens. And that was the time of the Six Sigma black belts, process improvements, efficiencies. I enjoyed it. I moved to a company called UnitedHealth Group. You might have
Okay.
heard of UHG. Worked with them again, offshoring their processes. uh, then an interesting point, a pivotal point in my career was I moved to EY, Ernst and Young at that time,
Okay.
and we had to globalize and standardize their risk and compliance processes. And that was a big challenge because each country will have their own rules. Each
Mhm.
countries will have their own regulations.
Yep.
And again, that was an amazing journey for me. I worked with some of the smartest people around. And then I worked with JPMorgan. I worked with BDO. I was BDO Canada's director of compliance. But last year is when I thought I need to start something on my own. What the tools that we have used in these large corporations can have a profound impact on small business owners, right? So if I would have suggested something to one of these large companies and said, let's do this analysis,
Mhm.
it takes, it's a bigger ship to steer.
Yeah.
It takes time to take decisions and then to see the results. And what you realize is the moment you start using the same tools for smaller organization, you're working with a business owner and you suggest something and say, oh, this sounds
Very agile.
good.
They can change on a fly.
Yeah, let's implement it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And when you implement it tomorrow, is that means you're going to see the results in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And if the results are not as expected, change, improve, tweak. So the same tools that you use for these big corporates can have such a profound impact. A multiplier effect on the small businesses is amazing. And that's when I started business coaching. I did realize I would not have all the knowledge, right? I had the experience of my 21 years working with these big corporations, where I need frameworks. And that's when I worked with Focal Point Business Coaching. It was co-founded by Brian Tracy. So we now use Brian Tracy's frameworks.
Does he have a framework on a sales or just in a general, in a coaching as well?
No, it's an entire business coaching. It's every aspect of a business. And it's what we've done is those curriculums or those coaching modules have actionables out of it. So it's not as if somebody's giving you motivational fluff and saying, oh, listen to me speaking good things. So, okay, now you've had that, you've read 3 pages of what a Pareto is. Let's see how it applies to your business and let's do it. So every session is very insightful and actionable. People come out of a very clear 90-day action plan or a very clear next step from each of those sessions. So working 21 years in the corporate world with big firms, improving their processes, and I've realized it's not just one process improvement. You need always start with a strategy and say, in 5 years, I'm going to globalize this entire unit, 140 countries, we're going to bring it together. Right? You start with a strategy, you start with a mission, and then it becomes so easy. And there are tools, there are frameworks. What applied in business 40 years back, Gurmeet, is still true today. AI and others are tools to achieve it. So you can achieve it much faster, but the fundamentals remain the same. You need a marketing plan, you need to generate leads, you need to convert those leads to get a customer.
Yeah.
And then the whole process, it's the same.
Got it. Did you discover something going through this process, Saurabh, that you didn't know that when you were taking on a coaching side of things? Did you learn something that, hey, listen, I thought it was more of a process challenges, more of a clarity challenge, but I just learned this is probably another item that business owners are struggling with?
I think one of the most valuable lessons, and I do say that, I've changed as a person. I used to be very, very data oriented guy. And, I still remember a big poster in my cabin saying, in God we trust, others bring data. Right? I used to look at everything with a lens of data. What changed is, when you go through the know thyself and you understand and you help others know themselves, you realize how each individual is very different. My motivation for doing something, the same thing, could be very different. And for the other person doing the same thing, the motivation could be very different. I think my appreciation for how complex humans are is much more. The perspectives now I have, do I get angry? No. Well, probably still, but do I get as angry as I used to be wherein things won't align with how I wanted them to be? No, because I now understand other person has a different human behavioral model, is looking at things with a very different perspective, and they could be right.
Yeah.
Ask a question. And I think, when I've done those assessments with, I would say, dozens of people. And once you get a sneak peek into everybody's strengths, weaknesses. I'll give you an example. I'm somebody who's a very analytical guy. I want to comply. I'll read rules, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And then I've figured out there are people who would not do that. And that used to make me upset. But then I realized, no, they are the ones who will probably create those rules.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to follow what somebody else has written. Similarly, I'll do a lot of analysis. I probably might get stuck with taking decisions. And here is this guy taking all the decisions without being analytical.
Yeah.
Now, he thinks I'm a fool because I'm taking forever to take a decision. And I think he's a fool because he's not even analyzing before taking a decision.
He's just jumping in. Yeah.
But the fact is, you just can't keep analyzing and not take decisions. And you just can't keep deciding without analyzing or looking at the data. It's a blend of so many things that makes things right.
Yeah.
I think my learning journey has been amazing with this, knowing people, talking to them, and sharing one's insight with another, connecting them and say, hey, this is what the other guy did. And I'm backed by like more than 300 coaches in Focal Point. So when I speak to them and say, hey, this is one business owner's challenge, what are your perspectives on this? It's so beautiful. You see a very different view that you didn't had.
Yeah. But that's a great point. You talk about data analytics. That's been one of my struggle actually when I started a business. Came from software background, right? So when you're developing software, you put something in a compiler, you hit this enter button. If you said 2 + 2, moment you hit enter, you get the answer right away. It's an instant answer. So no matter what you're building as a software, moment you hit enter, you get the compiling software. So used to getting the instant result for something you're doing, you get the result right away. But as you know, in a business, whether you're marketing or whether you're sales, sometimes it's a 6 months by the time you get the result. Sometimes it's a year, but by the time you get the result, right? Not used to that stuff. I'm used to this, instant result. Took me a long time to learn that, and took me a long time to get comfortable with that. Some of the work you're going to do in a business, the result may not be there in a 6 months, or sometime years, sometime 2 years, 3 years. But so used to instant results. So it took me a while to make that adjustment and understand that. So I think back to what you're saying, data analytics side, it's sometimes you just have to get over that stuff.
Oh, yes. And there's so many aspects of a business. You are a marketeer, you are the finance guy, you are the IT person. For a small business, it is overwhelming, right? And it's just that if I know that I'm not good at 5 things and I acknowledge, I write it down, I'll probably spend more time doing those 5 things, even if I don't outsource. I know I'm not great at it. I'll be more cautious. So yeah, no, it's been an amazing journey, meeting people, knowing them, instead of sitting on your desk, looking at a process, flow charts, telling people what to do. I've handled some large teams, 120 people, but I've always looked at those as matrix, right? As manage those. But we all had one clear goal, one KPI, one vision. And when I work with other business owners, I get completely different perspectives on the same thing can be done hundreds of ways.
Yeah.
And we just need to connect those dots and say, we have seen this work so well for the other guy. We want to do it, try it. And it might not work for him because that's not how that person wants to work.
Yeah. There's so many solutions to the same problem.
Right.
Let's talk about mindset. One of the, I think we were doing a pre-podcast discussion, and the mindset is, we were talking about it, but that is an area a lot of people struggle. Not only mindset of a business owner, but the people around you as well. Whether it's your team, whether it's your management team, your C-level employees, or your employees that are helping on a daily basis and operationally. I mean, you could have a certain mindset, but if the people have a negative mindset, that's going to impact you. Eventually, you're going to have to struggle. You have to deal with it. How important do you think the mindset is for business owners and the teams and the people around you?
I think mindset for any human, is the key to unlock their full potential. If you don't have the right mindset, you'll not even utilize the 2 or 3% of the brain that you're using right now, right? The negativity sucks you in. It's a black hole.
Mm-hmm.
If you start finding a blame for everything, if you start finding an excuse for everything, hey, my system didn't work, right? It's not moving you forward. So a mindset is the key. A lot of organizations nowadays spend time on training people on skill set. Hey, there's AI coming in. We all need to learn AI, right? It's a tool. We learn it, right? Is that the most important thing? No. The attitude is, if I don't have an attitude to learn that tool, if I don't have an attitude to use that tool, I'll not use it. All those trainings would fail.
Yeah.
And the majority of what we do is, if you've read Dale Carnegie's books, is it's all about attitude. When you're looking for a staff and you're hiring a staff, if I say, Gurmeet, if you have to hire a assistant, what do you look at them?
Mindset and hunger. I'll take mindset and hunger over anything.
Yeah.
If there's a hunger to learn something and there's a mindset, technical skills are easy to teachable. We all learn from jobs. You can easily teach them hard skills. But these two areas, we hire a lot of young people. And the first two skills we look for is a mindset and the hunger to learn, right? Is their drive. They want to learn more. They want to grow more. If you can combine those two, everything else is easily figured out well.
Oh, yeah. So if I'm hiring a person, what am I going to look at? I'm going to look at, do they have integrity? Right? It's not as if they're the best AI developers in the world. No. Do they have the integrity? And if they are the best AI developers in the world and they don't have an integrity, there's a challenge. Those skills are of no use to me. So what you really look for is that attitude and mindset first, and the skills later. Skills they're trainable. But once you've hired people, a lot of companies don't invest on the skill building, the attitude building. They spend on skill building, right? And I see a lot of gap there and say, I understand budget constraints at times, but attitude is the person with the right attitude will go and learn that skill himself, will figure out a way to read a book and learn that skill himself. But a person who does not have the right attitude, you can spend millions of dollars on training them on skill set, it is not going to help on your business. So that positive mindset and the growth mindset is the key here for every business. And I think businesses should start investing on their team and their people, on the attitude more.
Mindset training. That investment goes a long way, as you mentioned. We train people daily, but that people would say, we don't have a budget for it, or we don't have a time for it. Biggest excuse I hear is a time for it. If you don't have time to train your people, what else are you spending time on? I mean, if you simply train your people right, they will go out, do all the work for you. So, that investment in the time, that's so critical. But I hear a lot of colleagues, business owner listening, or C-level people. So the biggest complaint I hear is there's so much work, we just don't have time to train people.
Which I think, as I said, entrepreneurship is a lonely job, and they're alone, and you expect them to do all of it. That's wherein you need somebody as a sounding board saying, this is important as well. Let's create a plan. That right balance in business is very important. You just can't keep looking at saying, oh, my profits are going up, revenues are going great, and you're not looking at people. They'll come down.
Yeah.
If the people are not right, probably you'll have great revenues and profits for the first 1 or 2 years. But if you don't develop your people, or if the people leave, they don't have the right attitude, you're going to lose all of it. It's going to balance out. The nature is going to create that equilibrium for everyone. That balance of everything is so important for a long-term growth, sustainable growth. Yeah, you can. I can be a coach who can say, I'm going to increase your profit. I'm going to double your profit in 6 months.
Yeah.
But will that be sustainable? I know, probably yes. So if in 6 months, if we look at all the aspects of your business and improve on all of them together, probably that's sustainable. Right? You can lose the weight in 2 months. Is that sustainable? Is a challenge. So anyone who keeps a very long-term vision and focus, and then work towards it and ensure the balance in every other aspect of the business is the key. The fastest way, I'll repeat this again, the fastest way to grow big is to go slow.
Yeah. You mentioned the balance. It's interesting. It reminded me, I did the same journey a while ago with the corporate world to starting a business. I'm sure, you going through that as well. You done that. A lot of business owners I see, they struggle with this as well. When you making a changes or you're trying to grow, your family suffers. and finding that taking care of family while while you're growing a business, I think that's a key for a lot of people. But that's where the struggle comes in. You don't want to do expense of your families. um, if you want to talk about your journey, or what do you see people you're working with, how do they find the right approach to deal with it? Because that's we make a lot of sacrifices as a family, and that the struggle comes in when something you have to do something in a business, and you simply say, listen, I can't do that, I gotta take care of family. But finding that, and by the time you find, it takes time to figure that out. So if you want to talk about your journey, or what do you see as a client?
Yeah, years ago in one of the trainings, I don't remember where it was, but in one of the trainings, I learned a concept of emotional bank account. Right?
Okay.
And it was in a corporate setting wherein you said, you have a boss, manager you report to. You keep doing good things. You're adding $1 into that account every time you do something good.
Mm-hmm.
You commit one error, you take out $10.
To withdraw from it.
You withdraw $10, you withdraw 10x of it. So you have to do 10 good things to do one thing that's wrong. I think that stayed with me. That applies to everything. In corporate life, I've spent time with my family. They'll be willing to support you in a journey wherein you would say, I'm going to be unavailable for some time. But once you're doing good enough, you withdraw enough, to put it back in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
interesting.
You just can't let the balance go zero. Right? So you need to keep putting in, and if you now look at 4 bank accounts, one is your business success, which is defined by everyone very differently. I have a client who says, I'm earning $500,000, I'm happy. I just want to spend more time with my family. So let's make our processes efficient so that I can watch my son's soccer games. Right? So for him, that's a business success. $500,000, I'm happy. I have another client who says, okay, so we are operating in US and Canada. I really want to start operations in Australia and New Zealand as well. The definition of his business success is very different. But what does that success looks like? That's one bank account for you. Think of it. And then the other is the financial freedom. You're earning money, you're putting it all back in the business. What if something goes wrong? Do you have your 6 month, 1 year emergency funds? Is your retirement taken care of? Is your education funds up and running? The third account I tell everyone is health and wellness. You could be a billionaire, but that billion is of no use if you don't have the health and wellness. Right? Life will bring in the equilibrium. Your business success is going to come down if you don't maintain your health. And the fourth bank account is your family and relationships. You can withdraw till the time you have enough deposits in there. Right? Keep depositing. Keep that bank account growing. Keep all of it grow.
Yeah, you don't want to win in one area. You want to win in all of those bank accounts you just mentioned, right?
Oh, yes. You really don't want to be a millionaire driving a Lamborghini to an empty mansion with no kids, or kids who don't want to talk to you, or wife who doesn't like you anymore. Right? You just need to maintain that balance in all the 4 areas. Otherwise, there would be a challenge. If you don't have the financial freedom, all that business success is of no use if you can't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right? Or if you don't have a family to enjoy with. So business success, and that's one thing I loved about, how Brian Tracy trains or teaches in his philosophy. There's a balance in all 4. I am not a coach who would say, let's just focus on the business, ignore rest aspects of your life. I don't care about it because I'm a business coach. No, that growth is of no use, is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Unless all those 4 bank accounts, and once you've achieved a great equilibrium and thanks to it, the 5th bank account is spirituality. Then you start depositing in there as well. You can start early if you want to, which is
you want to start earlier, right? You don't want to wait till you achieve something, so do that at that point, right?
Yeah. But Maslow's pyramid, hierarchy
Yeah.
does come in place, wherein you look for your survival first before you reach there. But
Good point. Yeah.
as early as you start building that bank account, it's amazing. I've realized a lot of what our religious textures, any religion teaches, aligns with what Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, and everyone is saying as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking you to pray to the God, be very specific on what you want in life. They're asking you to be very specific with your goals with the business.
Yeah.
So it all aligns so beautifully. But all those bank accounts, don't let them be in negative or zero. Keep
Yeah.
putting in.
Yeah, definitely want to work on all of them at the same time instead of just working one. Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, there's so much to learn from you. Definitely I learned so much from business owners who are watching us, business leaders who are listening to us.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Gurmeet. Just give me 1 second.
Sure. Can we pause it?
Yeah. I'm very sorry. I put it on D&D.
No worries.
Okay. Sorry for that.
You good? No worries. People understand these days. We all got that, multiple other things running at the same time. So, yeah, no, there's so much to learn from you. Definitely business owner listening to us or watching us on a podcast. I learned so much. I'm sure they're gonna learn so much. They're gonna draw a lot of value from our discussion. Where can they find you? How can they connect with you, Saurabh?
Okay. So they can visit my website, ethicalgrowthpartners.com.
I'll put the link below the video.
Yeah, and it's an interesting story there as well, Gurmeet. It tells my purpose and why. It has to be an ethical growth is what I work with clients for, and all the details are available on the website. I'm based out of Langley, BC, just outside Vancouver, but I work with business owners across the world.
Yeah, these days you can work, especially what we're doing on a look at the Zoom calls, right? You can work with the people no matter what part of the world they are in, right? So you can connect and you can have discussions.
Oh yeah,
very interesting. Hey, listen, it was great discussion. I learned so much from you. I'm sure business owner we're watching who are building their businesses, they're growing their companies. There's so many blind spots, so many areas we don't pay attention to, simply because that's not what we're good at. We need people like you to, show us those blind spots and then help us to get to those objectives much faster and stay focused. Many areas you can help out. So learn so much. I'm sure business who are watching, the link to your website below this video. Click a button, reach out to you, have a conversation. I'm sure they're gonna gain totally different perspective, chatting with you. So great discussion. Thank you so much for time, Saurabh.
Thank you so much, Gurmeet. And I really appreciate what you're doing for business owners. Bringing that awareness is so critical in today's world. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
talk
you.
soon.
Take care.